All hell is breaking loose across the United States right now. And it starts with one core reality. Donald Trump and his regime are trying to outrun. They are covering up the Epstein files release and refusing to fully comply with the Epstein Transparency Act. Instead of full disclosure, they dumped a batch of heavily redacted documents and tried to shrug it off with a, here it is. This matters because the Epstein Transparency Act was signed into law by Trump himself in November 2025 with a December 20 deadline for full disclosure. And yet the Justice Department released only a fraction of what the law requires with sweeping redactions. Worse, they initially pulled more than a dozen photos from the release, including images showing Trump with Epstein, and only restored them after massive backlash. Lawmakers are calling it what it looks like, a cover-up. Members of Congress and watchdogs are describing a deliberate strategy: slow walk the files, hide key material like New York grand jury pages, and flout the law to protect certain names and images. The DOJ under Pambani is getting hit from all sides. Rep. Ayanna Pressley called it a brazen cover-up because the release was so censored it barely qualifies as disclosure. Even Trump's own DOJ had Deputy AG Brad Blanch step in to insist removing the photos. Had nothing to do with Trump, but the sequence is too obvious. Trump-linked images disappear, people notice, backlash explodes, and then the images return. They did restore some visuals, including that image of Trump flanked by bikini-clad women that briefly vanished. But the deeper problem hasn't changed. The documents remain drenched in redactions, hiding who knows what. Ranking members Jamie Raskin and Robert Garcia issued joint statements blasting the Trump administration for defying the law and continuing the Epstein cover-up. Victims are furious too. Trump officials deny any cover-up and claim redactions are only to protect victims, but that excuse collapses under the record. Less redacted versions were released in 2024 with Trump's name visible, and now the same name is being blacked out. The pattern reads like powerful person protection, and Trump is at the center of it. Then the chaos gets worse. Marjorie Taylor Greene slipped in an interview and suggested a foreign government could be pushing Trump to cover up the files. When asked if it was Israel, she said it could be. That didn't clarify anything. It poured gasoline on the fire. Now, lawmakers are openly threatening action when Congress returns. Inherent contempt fines for Bondi, contempt proceedings, and even impeachment talk to end what they say is lawless stonewalling. Media outlets are tracking the implosion in real time. CNN reported the Justice Department denying it's flouting the law, even as partial releases keep battering Trump's credibility. Reuters noted they restored the Trump photo after backlash. The BBC covered how it was reinstated and cited victim concerns, but to many, it reads like smoke and mirrors. NPR reported they're releasing additional files while removing others, beginning a dump tied to Epstein's life, death, and investigations, yet it still isn't enough. There are over 1,200 victims potentially affected, and the administration keeps acting like the public should accept blacked out pages as compliance. The Guardian slammed the limited release, heavy redactions, and apparent removals from the website. Le Monde reported the administration denying a cover-up, but victims aren't buying it. Politico highlighted members of Congress accusing the Trump administration of slow-walking documents, especially New York grand jury pages. Breitbart even ran coverage of Presley's accusation. Across the spectrum, the through line is the same. This isn't transparency, it's a deliberate effort to bury connections, especially Trump's well-documented ties to Epstein. And here's the tell. Whenever Trump goes into cover-up mode, he escalates attacks inside the United States to dominate the news cycle with fear. He ratchets up ICE and Border Patrol operations and unleashes what critics describe as authoritarian tactics that terrorize communities. This week has been no different. Horrors and abuses have been caught on tape in photos and in citizen footage documenting what the Trump regime is doing while it tries to redirect attention away from Epstein. Under Trump and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, DHS is boasting about historic actions, claiming that since January 20, U.S. CIS referred over 14,400 people to ICE for public safety, national security, and fraud concerns, including 182 serious cases. That's the PR framing. On the ground, communities describe raids, surging arrests, and fear spreading faster than facts. In Washington state alone, nearly 2,000 people have reportedly been arrested since Trump retook office, compared with 800 last year. Across the country, ordinary Americans are fighting back, banding together to block raids, distribute groceries, and warn neighbors. Federal agents arrived in New Orleans on December 3, launching operations and forcing local officials into scramble mode. In Chicago, a months-long crackdown branded Operation Midway Blitz reportedly arrested 1,900 people in the first half and deported refugees and migrants despite years of good conduct. An ever larger share of those arrested reportedly have no criminal record, with arrests hitting over 30,000 a month through mid-October. And Trump's plans don't stop. The push heading into 2026 includes expanding workplace raids, seeking billions in funding for ICE and Border Patrol, up to $170 billion through 2029, hiring thousands of agents, opening new detention centers, intensifying cooperation with local jails, and even engaging private companies to track people down. They're targeting farms and factories that previously escaped inspection, which could spike labor costs and inflation, but critics say Trump doesn't care about the economic fallout as long as the spectacle dominates headlines. Minnesota State Sen. Zainab Mohammed described the goal as making every person who looks like an immigrant feel deportable. Agents showing up early in the morning in multiple cars, wearing ski masks, not identifying themselves, demanding IDs and passports without judicial warrants, and creating fear through intimidation. Online, you see the conflict in raw form. Posts arguing leaders are doing nothing while protesters interfere. Others saying tariffs plus raids are shattering businesses and corroding peace, using immigration as a smokescreen. There's talk of a blue wave in the 2026 midterms driven by anti-Trump sentiment, affordability issues, and outrage over these ICE tactics. Reuters reported Trump set to expand the crackdown despite backlash. Al Jazeera covered deportations despite good behavior. Posts on X circulate details of expansions, regrets in Georgia as raids backfire, and even Canadian singer Matthew Good canceling a U tour in protest. Podcasts discussed Trump 2 ICE raids and the bipartisan push for Epstein files. The accusation from critics is blunt. The administration is turning neighborhoods into battlegrounds. A New York Times video analysis of a Los Angeles raid became a flashpoint, describing rapid entry tactics with kids inside and enforcement shifting to Sacramento, reporting 1,618 people jailed in LA, 80% without crimes, and ICE now expanding 50%. Rep. Mike Quigley said that in Chicago's Little Village, revenue dropped 50%, 911 calls fell, 21%, and school attendance halved in many neighborhoods because people are afraid to shop, call police, or send kids to school. Trump defended the raids and said they haven't gone far enough. Critics point to footage and eyewitness accounts as proof the crackdown is escalating. One widely cited example, Pittsburgh. On the 17th of December, 2025, on Norton Street in the Mount Washington neighborhood, neighbors reported chaos as federal agents detained a Latino man during a scuffle, with reports he was hit, tackled, and pepper sprayed, followed by a heavy police presence and medics checking people. Local reporting noted Pittsburgh police said they do not assist ICE with federal administrative warrant service and only respond to emergency calls. Questions about why the man was taken and whether warrants existed were reported as unanswered. Another incident went viral in Minneapolis on December 15 near Lake Street and Pillsbury Avenue. Eyewitnesses recorded a woman being dragged during a traffic stop and held down in the snow as protesters shouted she was pregnant and couldn't breathe, and 2 people were reportedly arrested for assaulting agents in the chaos. Then there's Amherst, New York, on December 16, where ICE and FBI reportedly swarmed a home and arrested 2 roofers mid-job, leaving work unfinished in freezing weather, and the homeowner called it sickening. Videos show residents demanding answers about why workers are being treated like targets. And then you get the face of the crackdown. Gregory Bovino, Border Patrol commander from New Orleans, leading sweeps. Viral clips show him at a gas station in Lake County, Illinois, amid arrests around Waukegan, playing rock, paper, scissors with another agent like it's a joke. Other clips show him in Chicago saying they brought several hundred agents from New Orleans, describing Title VIII immigration enforcement, operating across places like Cicero and Little Village for an unknown duration. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker put out a statement condemning the raids, calling them harassment and urging people to peacefully protect neighbors. In Evanston, Illinois, Mayor Daniel Biss confronted Bovino on December 17 outside a gas station. After agents detained a man, Biss accused him of racism and violence, while Bovino claimed they were there because the community refuses to enforce immigration laws. Biss later urged residents to stay alert, stay active, and use the ICR hotline 855-435-7693. Meanwhile, a Nashville story intensified outrage. Esther Lopez Sanchez was reported in ICE custody while her U.S. citizen baby was placed in DCS custody. She was arrested last year while pregnant on drug and firearm charges that were later dropped. After giving birth, she was transferred to an ICE detention center in South Louisiana without her baby and has been separated for over a month. Legal analysts debated best interests of the child and due process rights, with questions about undocumented relatives taking custody without risking detention. The narration also includes a sponsor segment, IQ Bar, described as a plant protein snack and hydration sponsor with an ultimate sampler pack. The offer says, text truth to 64,000 for 20% off and free shipping, with message and data rates possibly applying. Back to enforcement footage, in Salisbury, Maryland on December 17, 4-year-old Vanessa Parazal, brought to the U.S. at age 2, was reportedly swarmed by masked agents after dropping her daughter at Pinehurst Elementary School. When she didn't exit, they smashed the driver's side window and a neighbor captured video. The narration claims a custody dispute tip from the father triggered ICE. Protests formed outside the school with community members describing the ripple effect on children and the neighborhood. Another alarming clip cited happened in Rialto, California, outside a speed wash laundromat. A man running from a fast-moving truck was struck by a side mirror, tumbled, then got up and ran before masked agents swarmed and handcuffed him. Critics say no medical help was called. Rialto police said they were not notified and are investigating, trying to identify the driver of the black pickup, while advocates demanded answers about who was involved and why. Finally, the narration highlights confrontations where civilians refuse to answer status questions and warn others that ICE is nearby, describing standoffs in places like Beaverton and Portland amid protests and arrests. The story ties back to the thesis. All of this is happening while Trump is desperate to distract from the Epstein mess. It cites Arizona on December 5, where ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, and partners executed 16 federal search warrants across restaurants and other locations. It cites NPR reporting that in 2025, ICE began arresting people at federal or immigration courtrooms to meet quotas, fueling no-shows and overwhelming courts. It cites the Prison Policy Initiative, noting that as of late July 2025, ICE stopped reporting arrests from certain programs, obscuring the scope as non-criminal arrests reportedly surged. It repeats claims from ex-posts alleging deletions were meant to protect Trump, arguing the cover-up is poorly executed, while debates rage about victims' lawyers, earlier access, and disinformation campaigns muddying the waters. And the conclusion lands hard. This regime, the narration says, is tearing families apart, crippling local economies, and hiding powerful connections while claiming it's protecting America. The call is direct. Don't let it slide. Demand full Epstein releases, protect immigrants from these tactics, call your representatives, protest peacefully, support victims, and vote this nightmare out in 2026 before it destroys more lives.